There's a moment when someone who knew Eminem early stops and says something simple. He doesn't explain it. He doesn't push it. He just says the person standing there now doesn't feel like the one he remembers. That sentence matters because it comes from experience, not distance. It comes from someone who was in the room before fame tightened everything, before attention became constant, before behavior had consequences far beyond the moment. Stay focused on the sequence, watch how each adjustment leads to the next, and pay attention to what disappears quietly along the way. Because sometimes people don't vanish, they survive in a form others no longer recognize. Before Eminem existed, before the name Eminem carried weight, before it became a brand, Marshall Mathers lived a life shaped by instability. He grew up in Detroit and surrounding areas where money stayed short and housing never felt permanent. Moving happened often. Schools changed. Friendships broke before they could settle. That constant disruption shaped how he interacted with the world. Home life carried pressure. Arguments were common. Authority felt unpredictable. Support felt inconsistent. Marshall learned early that security could disappear without warning. That awareness stayed with him. It made him alert, reactive, and guarded. Anger played a central role in his early personality. It showed up quickly and loudly. At the same time, humor sat right next to it. He used jokes, exaggeration, and shock to deflect attention away from vulnerability. People who knew him then said he could switch moods fast. One moment, he was joking. The next, he was defensive. That unpredictability was part of how he navigated unstable environments. He didn't present himself as confident. Insecurity surfaced in how he spoke and how he reacted to criticism. Slights stayed with him. Insults lingered. He remembered who dismissed him. That memory fueled his drive. Emotion sat close to the surface. He reacted intensely to small events. That intensity made him stand out. It also made him difficult to ignore. People around him noticed how deeply he felt things. Music entered his life as refuge. Rap did not arrive as a career plan. It arrived as relief. Writing lyrics allowed him to empty thoughts that stayed trapped otherwise. He filled notebooks with ideas, anger, and humor. He wrote quickly. He wrote often. The content carried personal weight. Freestyle battles became another outlet. They provided structure for release. In those moments, he could direct energy outward. He could turn frustration into performance. Winning mattered less than being heard. Being acknowledged mattered more than approval. These battles were raw. There was no polish. Mistakes happened publicly. Reactions were immediate. That environment matched his emotional state. Nothing was filtered. People who watched him during this phase described desperation. He wanted recognition badly. He wanted someone to notice what he could do. That desire came from years of feeling overlooked. He also showed openness. He shared personal details without protection. He used his own life as material. There was no sense of long-term consequence. The moment mattered more than future interpretation. This phase matters because it establishes the baseline. This is the version of Marshall Mathers people like Snoop Dogg are referring to when they talk about knowing him before everything changed. It is the reference point. There was no machine around him yet, no team, no public image to maintain. He reacted naturally. He spoke freely. He took risks without thinking about how they would follow him. Understanding this period explains why later changes feel so dramatic to those who witnessed it. Without this context, the shift looks mysterious. With it, the shift looks like response. Everything that follows builds on this foundation. Every transformation only makes sense when this starting point is clear. When Snoop met Eminem. When Eminem first crossed paths with Snoop Dogg, the dynamic mattered immediately. Snoop was already established. He had seen trends come and go. He had watched artists rise fast and disappear faster. He understood how pressure reshapes people. Early interactions between them carried curiosity. Snoop didn't see polish. He saw hunger. Eminem came into rooms alert and tense. He listened closely. He responded quickly. He measured reactions. There was respect present from the start. Eminem showed awareness of who he was standing next to. At the same time, he didn't shrink. He pushed back when needed. He stayed sharp in conversation. That balance stood out. Snoop's perspective matters because he recognizes patterns. He has watched many artists transform under exposure. He understands survival tactics. He understands when someone is still operating from instinct rather than strategy. Early Eminem carried nervous energy. His body language reflected tension. He stayed guarded. He also stayed open. His emotions showed easily. When he laughed, it was loud. When he felt challenged, it was visible. He defended himself quickly. He reacted to perceived disrespect without hesitation. That defensiveness came from years of being tested. At the same time, he showed eagerness to prove himself. In rooms with established artists, he absorbed everything. He studied behavior. He listened to feedback. He reacted intensely to evaluation. Praise mattered. Dismissal stung. Snoop observed this closely. He saw someone still operating without protective layers. There was no long-term calculation yet. Eminem reacted in the moment. This version carried volatility. It also carried honesty. Nothing felt rehearsed. Conversations could go anywhere. Reactions were immediate. That matters because it contrasts sharply with the version people see later. The early version felt accessible to those in the room. It felt present. Snoop's later comments about Eminem not being the same are grounded in this memory. He isn't comparing eras of music. He's comparing behavior, presence, and energy. This meeting happened before systems wrapped around Eminem, before global attention narrowed his options, before every word became permanent. Snoop met him when instinct still guided behavior more than caution, and that detail sets up everything that follows. Because once protection layers form, access changes, behavior changes, presence changes. Snoop met him before those layers existed. And that leads into the next chapter. The Fame Impact Event. Fame did not arrive in slow steps for Eminem. It arrived all at once. One moment, he was known inside specific circles. The next moment, his name was everywhere. Radio stations played his music constantly. Television appearances followed. Magazine covers appeared quickly. Conversations about him spread across places he had never been. This speed mattered. Many artists have time to adjust as attention grows. Eminem did not get that time. The scale jumped too fast. Underground recognition turned into global visibility within a short window. Every move became visible. Every word traveled far beyond its original audience. The industry treated him as an event rather than a developing artist. Marketing pushed aggressively. Tours expanded quickly. Interviews stacked up. Expectations formed overnight. He went from fighting for attention to managing excess attention. That shift changed how he moved through the world. Places that once felt normal became risky. Crowds formed. Strangers approached constantly. Privacy disappeared without warning. There was no clear boundary between work and life. Sudden fame creates constant exposure. Cameras appear without notice. Conversations become recordings. Opinions spread instantly. Mistakes do not stay local. They travel globally. This creates a permanent sense of observation. Psychologically, that level of attention forces adaptation. The mind looks for safety. It looks for patterns that reduce risk. Eminem entered an environment where everything could be misinterpreted. Humor could offend. Anger could escalate. Silence could be framed negatively. There was no off switch. Even downtime carried weight. Public perception followed him everywhere. The absence of privacy changed behavior. Awareness increased. Spontaneity decreased. Friends and collaborators noticed changes early. Conversations shortened. Trust became selective. Eminem spoke less freely in mixed company. He measured reactions. He chose words carefully. This was not sudden arrogance. It was adjustment. Exposure teaches caution. Caution reshapes personality over time. Insiders noticed fewer spontaneous moments. Jokes became guarded. Emotional openness narrowed. The raw edge people recognized began to smooth out. Control replaced instinct. The loss of privacy affected relationships. Friends from earlier phases struggled to reach him. Conversations changed tone. Shared experiences became rare. Trust required more testing. This phase marked the first internal shift. The raw version that reacted immediately began to recede. A more controlled version stepped forward. This change happened quietly. There was no announcement. It unfolded through daily decisions. Pressure did not remain external. It moved inward. Eminem carried awareness with him. Even alone, the sense of observation remained. That internalization shaped behavior more than outside demands. This process repeated daily. Each interview reinforced caution. Each crowd reinforced distance. Each headline reinforced awareness. The person adapting was still the same individual. The behavior changed to survive the environment. That adaptation laid the foundation for later perceptions of replacement. People close to him sensed the shift because access changed. Energy changed. Presence changed. The difference was not musical alone. It was personal. That shift did not end here. It deepened as exposure continued. The survival version is born. When pressure reaches a certain level, people adapt in ways they don't consciously plan. This happens across professions, but it accelerates under global attention. The mind looks for stability when the environment becomes unpredictable. Over time, that search creates a version of the self built to withstand exposure. This is the survival version. Some people later describe it as a clone because it feels separate from who they remember. This process does not begin with intent. It begins with repetition. The same stress appears every day. The same risks repeat. The same consequences show up again and again. The mind learns what causes damage and what reduces it. Behavior shifts accordingly. For Eminem, pressure arrived from multiple directions at once. Fame increased rapidly. Media attention stayed constant. Expectations solidified early. Every word carried weight. Humor attracted scrutiny. Anger sparked headlines. Silence raised questions. Each reaction taught a lesson. The original version of Eminem relied on openness. He reacted immediately. He spoke freely. He used emotion as fuel. That approach worked in smaller spaces. It became dangerous under constant observation. The survival version formed slowly. It did not appear overnight. It emerged through small adjustments. Speak less in interviews. Share fewer personal details. Keep reactions measured. Control the environment whenever possible. This new version functioned as armor. Armor limits damage. It also limits movement. The trade-off happens gradually. At first, the protection feels necessary. Over time, it becomes permanent. The survival version manages access. Fewer people get close. Conversations stay surface level. Trust becomes conditional. Familiar faces remain, but interactions change. The circle tightens. Emotion becomes regulated. Strong reactions invite interpretation. Interpretation invites criticism. Criticism invites pressure. To reduce this chain, emotion stays contained. Public displays become controlled. Private displays become rare. Image management becomes a daily task. Every appearance reinforces expectation. Consistency becomes safety. Predictability reduces risk. This applies to clothing, tone, and behavior. Deviation invites scrutiny. Vulnerability decreases. Sharing personal struggle opens space for misinterpretation. The survival version learns to keep struggles private. This protects reputation, but increases isolation. The original version of Eminem relied on emotional release. He used anger, humor, and openness to process experience. Under constant scrutiny, that processing became unsafe. Every release created consequence. Every consequence reinforced restraint. Raw emotion does not survive permanent judgment. It breaks down. It fragments. It turns inward. To avoid that outcome, the survival version steps forward. This shift explains why people who knew him early feel distance later. They are interacting with the version built to endure pressure, not the version built to express freely. The survival version does not erase memory. It does not eliminate feeling. It prioritizes stability. Stability requires control. The early Eminem thrived on reaction. Under global scrutiny, reaction invites harm. To survive, reaction must be managed. These boundaries protect mental health in the short term. Over time, they create distance from others. Friends from earlier phases feel the shift most strongly because they remember unrestricted access. This distance feeds the idea of cloning. People see the same face, the same voice, the same skill. They feel a different presence. The difference feels structural. The survival version also changes how creativity is approached. Risk still exists, but it is calculated. Expression becomes deliberate. Output remains high, but spontaneity decreases. This version is effective. It sustains long careers, it maintains control, it reduces damage, it also costs something. Emotional range narrows, access to earlier relationships weakens, isolation increases. None of this happens because someone wants it. It happens because the environment demands it. This understanding reframes the idea of replacement. The survival version did not arrive to erase the original. It arrived to protect it from collapse. From the outside, it looks like disappearance. From the inside, it feels like necessity. That is why Snoop's observation carries weight. He met the version that existed before armor formed. He recognizes the difference because he remembers the vulnerability. The survival version does not explain itself. Explanation invites scrutiny. Silence maintains control. Silence allows the version to function. Snoop's line revisited. When Snoop Dogg said, "I knew M before, he's not the same," the weight of that sentence came from how little it explained on the surface. It wasn't detailed. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with examples or accusations. That's why it stuck. People sensed that the meaning sat underneath the words rather than inside them. Emotionally, that sentence points to loss of familiarity. Familiarity is built through shared behavior. The way someone talks when they're relaxed, the way they react when surprised, the way they argue, joke, or shut down. When those patterns change, recognition fades even if the person is still present. Snoop likely meant that the Eminem he interacts with now does not move through conversations the same way. Access feels different. Responses feel filtered. The dynamic that once existed no longer functions. That doesn't require hostility, it requires distance. Loss of access is central here. Early relationships form before boundaries harden. People speak freely, they interrupt each other, they share half-formed thoughts. Once fame solidifies, access narrows. Conversations become structured, time becomes managed, layers appear. For someone like Snoop, who values presence and energy, this shift would be noticeable immediately. It's not about personality change in a dramatic sense. It's about the absence of ease. Loss of the old dynamic follows naturally. Dynamics depend on balance. When one person becomes globally visible, the balance shifts. The relationship adjusts or fades. Familiar rhythms disappear. This is not a criticism, it's observation. Snoop's tone matters. He did not sound angry. He did not sound betrayed. He sounded reflective. That reflection suggests acknowledgement rather than blame. Snoop understands transformation. He has lived through multiple versions of himself. He knows survival requires adaptation. This line was not an accusation. It did not imply wrongdoing. It did not suggest intent. It described outcome. Acknowledging transformation is different from condemning it. Snoop's comment fits the former. He recognized that the person he knew operates differently now. That recognition carries grief. Grief does not always follow death. It follows absence. When someone remains physically present but emotionally distant, grief still appears. Losing a friend who is still alive creates confusion. There is no closure. There is no ceremony. The relationship fades quietly. Snoop's words sound like someone processing that quiet loss. He remembers a version of Eminem that no longer shows up the same way. That absence creates longing without resolution. This type of grief often stays unspoken. Saying too much invites interpretation. Saying little protects respect. Snoop chose restraint. That restraint is why the sentence resonated. Viewers filled in the gaps with their own experiences. Many people recognize this feeling. Someone they knew changed under pressure. Access disappeared. The connection weakened. Sometimes people don't disappear. They become unreachable, and that sets up the next phase. Because this distance is visible beyond personal relationships, it shows up in how the world sees Eminem now. The public versus private Eminem. The Eminem the public sees today appears controlled and disciplined. Appearances are deliberate. Interviews are selective. Statements are measured. He shows up when necessary and disappears when finished. This version values consistency. Performances follow structure. Public communication avoids unpredictability. Boundaries remain firm. This presence feels intentional. Fans recognize professionalism. They see focus. They see stability. They also notice distance. The public Eminem speaks less about personal life. He avoids extended explanation. He limits exposure. Silence becomes part of the image. This version functions well under scrutiny. It reduces risk. It maintains authority. It prevents misinterpretation where possible. Behind this presentation sits a private cost. Isolation increases when access narrows. Fewer people move freely into inner space. Trust becomes selective. Guarded behavior develops naturally under constant attention. Conversations stay contained. Relationships require screening. Spontaneity decreases. A limited circle provides safety. It also reduces variety. Feedback narrows. Emotional support becomes harder to access. This private cost does not show on stage. It shows in absence. Fewer casual interactions. Less openness. More distance. Fans sense this shift even without direct access. Art carries energy. When the creator's internal state changes, output reflects it. Listeners notice differences in tone, pacing, and focus. They may not articulate it clearly. They feel it. This sensation travels through music. The audience responds before analysis forms. Emotional distance registers subtly. Fans often struggle to explain why newer material feels different. They reference atmosphere rather than content. They talk about presence rather than technique. This reaction mirrors Snoop's experience on a different scale. Loss of familiarity appears without clear explanation. Public and private versions rarely align fully under fame. The gap widens as pressure continues. The artist learns to separate roles. This separation protects survival. It also alters connection. The audience responds to that alteration. They adjust expectations. Some stay, some drift, all feel the change. Understanding this dynamic reframes the idea of cloning. What people describe as replacement is often division. One version operates publicly, another remains protected. The distance does not signal deception, it signals adaptation. And that understanding carries forward. Because once the public senses change, speculation grows. Interpretation replaces access. When the artist changes, the audience feels it before they understand it. And that leads into what comes next. Why people call it cloning. Language changes when understanding runs out. When people can't easily explain a shift they feel strongly, they reach for words that carry weight. Cloning sits in that category. It sounds extreme because the change people sense feels extreme. The word appears when ordinary explanations feel thin. When a person changes in small ways, language stays practical. People say someone matured, adjusted, or evolved. When the change feels structural, language escalates. The person looks the same, speaks the same, and works at the same level, yet something about presence feels altered. That gap pushes people toward dramatic terms. Confusion drives this choice. Confusion creates discomfort. Discomfort looks for resolution. Strong words offer resolution faster than careful explanations. Cloning resolves confusion by naming the feeling of replacement without requiring technical detail. This happens often around public figures because access disappears early. Fans and observers rely on output rather than interaction. When output shifts, interpretation replaces conversation. The mind fills missing information with narrative. Extreme change invites extreme language. When a person's public behavior tightens quickly, observers assume something external caused it. The idea that pressure alone reshapes identity feels incomplete to many people. Pressure is invisible. Language prefers visible causes. The word clone implies separation. It suggests an original and a copy. That framing matches the emotional experience people report. They feel the presence of something familiar without the closeness that once existed. The copy explanation feels proportional to the loss. History shows this pattern repeating. Legends across music and culture attract similar language when their trajectory compresses time. Sudden rise, intense focus, reduced access, and early distance often lead to stories of replacement. Artists who change under attention become subjects of myth. When explanation stays quiet, myth grows louder. People interpret silence as confirmation. Silence does not correct misunderstanding, it allows it to settle. Historical parallels appear whenever a public figure's output remains strong while their accessibility shrinks. Fans notice the same face and voice paired with different energy. The gap between recognition and familiarity widens. Language stretches to bridge that gap. Cloning works because it describes permanence. People don't use the term for temporary shifts. They use it when change feels locked in. When years pass and the old version does not reappear, permanence feels real. The phrase also removes blame. Saying someone was replaced avoids accusing the person of choosing distance. It places cause elsewhere. That protects affection. Fans can keep admiration while explaining loss. Identity loss under pressure describes the process accurately. It also feels clinical. It lacks emotional force. People choose language that matches their emotional response. Clone carries shock. It matches how the change feels. Social media amplifies this tendency. Short formats reward strong language. Nuanced explanations don't travel as far. Dramatic framing spreads quickly. Repetition normalizes it. Over time, repetition hardens the term. What began as metaphor turns literal in retellings. New audiences encounter the word without context. The story shifts further from its origin. This doesn't mean people believe in literal replacement. Many use the word casually. They point to a feeling rather than a theory. The language becomes shorthand for distance. The persistence of this term says more about audience experience than artist behavior. People struggle when they can't map emotional memory onto current reality. Language fills that gap. The word sounds dramatic because the change feels permanent. And that brings the story to a harder question. If the change feels permanent, did the person experiencing it understand what was happening while it occurred? Did Eminem know it was happening? Self-awareness under extreme exposure develops unevenly. Some people recognize changes as they happen. Others understand them only after distance forms. In cases of rapid fame, recognition often lags behind adaptation. It's likely Eminem noticed shifts in behavior early. Awareness appears in how boundaries tightened. Decisions became deliberate. Exposure narrowed. These changes usually involve conscious recognition. People feel the need to protect something before they fully name what that something is. Recognition does not arrive as a single realization. It arrives in fragments. A conversation ends sooner than expected. An interview feels draining. A reaction sparks backlash. Each event teaches caution. Over time, caution becomes default. Lyrics provide indirect evidence of this awareness. Across later work, themes recur around control, fragmentation, and masks. The presence of these themes suggests reflection. Artists often process internal shifts through art before discussing them openly. These themes don't require quotation to recognize. They appear in tone, structure, and focus. The writing becomes more self-referential. Control becomes a topic. Distance becomes a subject. This suggests recognition without resolution. Awareness does not equal comfort. Knowing a change occurred does not mean knowing how to reverse it. Artists respond differently to this awareness. Some resist. They push against boundaries. They seek ways to return to earlier states. This often increases conflict and instability. Others accept the change. Acceptance does not mean satisfaction. It means acknowledgement that survival requires adjustment. The new version becomes familiar through repetition. Eminem's trajectory suggests acceptance over resistance. Output remained consistent. Boundaries stayed firm. Public presence stabilized. These signs point toward choosing sustainability. Acceptance carries cost. The earlier version does not return easily. Familiarity fades. Relationships change shape. Distance becomes routine. This acceptance can feel like loss even to the person experiencing it. The mind remembers how openness felt. The body remembers spontaneity. Returning to those states under current conditions feels unsafe. Survival under constant judgment prioritizes control. Control reduces risk. Risk threatens stability. This logic reinforces itself. Winning under this framework looks different. Success continues. Stability improves. Internal experience may feel narrower. The reward structure shifts. Survival does not always feel like winning. That tension explains why the story continues to resonate. People sense both achievement and loss. They feel admiration and distance at the same time. The narrative of cloning emerges where these feelings overlap. It gives shape to contradiction. It explains why presence remains while familiarity fades. Understanding this reframes the story. It becomes less about replacement and more about consequence. Extreme pressure reshapes identity. Language struggles to keep up. And that understanding carries forward. Because once people accept that change happened, the final question shifts from how to why. What does this level of success require from the person who carries it? What the clone cost him. The survival version kept Eminem functional under pressure. It allowed him to keep working. It allowed him to stay present in an environment that rarely forgives mistakes. That function came with cost. The cost shows up across emotional, creative, and human areas. Emotionally, spontaneity faded first. Early reactions gave way to measured responses. Decisions slowed, jokes carried filters, anger stayed contained. This shift protected him from misinterpretation. It also reduced the range of immediate expression. Distance from old relationships followed. Friends who knew him before fame noticed that access changed. Conversations shortened, topics narrowed, time became scheduled, casual contact became rare. These changes did not require conflict to take effect. They happened through absence. Spontaneity often sustains relationships. When spontaneity disappears, relationships require structure to survive. Many early relationships cannot adapt to that change. They fade quietly. Emotion did not disappear. It moved inward. Processing happened privately rather than publicly. That inward shift increased isolation. Sharing feelings carries risk under scrutiny. Avoiding risk becomes habit. Creative cost appeared gradually. Early work carried volatility. Tone shifted quickly. Humor, anger, and vulnerability coexisted freely. Over time, creative output became more controlled. Themes tightened. Delivery sharpened. Control improves consistency. It also narrows emotional range. Risk decreases. Exploration slows. The work remains strong. It feels different. Listeners notice changes in tone. Some described increased distance. Others described technical mastery paired with restraint. These descriptions reflect the same adjustment. Creativity thrives on exposure. Exposure becomes dangerous under constant judgment. Limiting exposure protects stability. It also limits surprise. Human cost carries the most weight. Loneliness increases when boundaries harden. Stability requires separation. Separation reduces connection. Connection requires risk. Living under constant observation changes how trust forms. Fewer people gain access. Those who do carry responsibility. That responsibility can strain interaction. Loneliness does not require physical isolation. It exists within crowded environments. It exists when conversation lacks depth. It exists when vulnerability stays private. This loneliness does not always feel dramatic. It feels routine. It becomes background. Stability replaces closeness. Control replaces openness. Everyday life contains smaller versions of this shift. Careers demand professionalism. Roles require restraint. Environments reward predictability. Over time, people trade expression for stability. This pattern carries no villain. There is no single force causing harm. Consequence follows structure. Systems reward survival behaviors. Survival behaviors reshape identity. People search for villains because they want closure. Closure simplifies understanding. This story resists that. No fix exists. The original version does not return on command. Time changes context. Context changes behavior. The question remains because it has no clean answer. If success requires becoming someone else, what happens to the original version? That question extends beyond celebrities. It applies to anyone who adapts under pressure. The story stays because it does not resolve. It invites reflection rather than conclusion. And that is why people keep watching, discussing, and returning to it.